Hello guys, it's Goober here, otherwise known as Alex, in the Mario Kart Wii community. And while we have a bit of downtime before the Weem servers are up, I wanted to do a quick World Cup 2025 tier list for Mario Kart Wii. I'm going to go over just placing teams where I think some teams can win, where I think they'll land up, and try to explain to the best of my ability as a D1 player who plays against a lot of these players where I think each of these teams will end up finishing. I'll try to be as in-depth as possible while keeping it short as possible about these teams' main lineups. And yeah, so this year we're doing a group stage, which is, I would say, probably not a great format for World Cup. It just means basically the top two teams advance to a bracket stage and the bottom two teams miss the cut. And a lot of teams are already pre-seeded, so I'm not going to deviate too much from those seedings because I think for the most part they're accurate, but I'll touch upon where I think they were wrong. Alright, starting off with Africa. This team is just X-Will pretty much. I think Slick's pretty underrated. I'd assume this team runs like a lineup like X-Will, Slick, KT, maybe like Ghost or Edge as their fourth. I don't really rate this team. Like, this team I don't think is going to make it past their group stage, but this team I think it's kind of, they're just here for experience for the most part. X-Will's obviously like a solid D2 player right now. This team's IGL by far, a very smart player, very vocal player, so I don't think this team will struggle too much in that department. I don't really even know who's bagging for this team though, so I think that could be a concern. I think this is a team that needs Shocks to win for sure, especially when you compare them against other teams. But I think this team already kind of knows that coming forward. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull like one upset, maybe against Australia or something. I would be really surprised to see them advance to bracket stage though. So I have this as one of my weaker teams. I know this is South Africa flag, but that's just Africa here. So I do have them as happy to be here. Asia is one of those teams that made it in by having to do play-ins. And I think this team is a team that has almost a different problem than Africa, where they still kind of don't have a strong enough bagger, although Yoshi Chris isn't like terrible by any means. This team's main issue is probably communication. Overall, this team does have some like good names. I think Josh impressed me within his play in like casting matches, and Kanade is this team's like best player by far. Definitely like in Wars it's kind of hard to say, but Mogi Lounge player, definitely a very good Mogi Lounge player, very strong mechanically, very smart, just can't communicate at all. Just doesn't speak English fluently, and this team communicates in English, so that's a bit of a problem. I can see this team running like Yoshi Chris bagging. Monty is like a solid like D3-ish runner, D2, D3. Same with Josh, and then I would imagine, I think you have to play Kanade every match, especially if you want to win matches. And I would go with like Charlie or Fire as the fourth. I think you can even put Fire in as like a third, and then like rotate like some other players. I do have this team stronger than Africa, but I don't really think they have the potential to upset, 'cause they pulled the hardest group for them to make it, unfortunately. So just again, another year of building experience for them. Alright, I'm on Team Canada, and we pulled Australia as our third team, and I heard somewhere that Bop isn't bagging, so if that's true, this team's going to struggle quite a bit, I think, and I honestly not even have them as a potential upset, but I'm going to have them at the lower end. If you have Barry, you kind of have to put them there. Barry's like a solid D1 runner. Used to be very impressed with his gameplay, very vocal, maybe a little indivvy as like an IGL, but very vocal, and this team kind of needs that. So this team's like success definitely relies on Barry, and I would say Bob, whoever the bagger is. If they're using Giorgio and Kyle though bagging, I don't think this team really has a shot. Barry's a strong runner, but the rest of this team is going to need some help to like make up for mistakes. I think Lochi is a very underrated player. Again, just kind of like a D2, D3 player, but I think he's like on the come up for sure. And then Matt W has sometimes impressed me in Lounge, but he's just a Lounge player, and I don't know who this team's running as their fourth. I would assume, honestly, I would assume they play Verly, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Maka get playing time. Again, I think with the group they pulled, they probably don't have a shot at beating us. But it's not like a free win by any means. Like, they could definitely beat us. Like, they have a probability to beat us. I just think with Barry being their only D1 runner and the rest of their runners kind of being D3-ish, this team is going to just try to get experience. All right, Benelux. Benelux already played their match. I think it's just fair to have them in top 8. I know there's maybe some issues with like scheduling and vacations with Leops and Jeff, but you know, anytime you look at this team, you have to talk about them. I think this team kind of struggled in their first match shock-wise with Joris bagging. So that's interesting because Joris has kind of been a D2, D3 bagger for the longest time. So I'm surprised that they struggled against Dermo in shock count. But overall, I think this team has a good shot at being really good. I'm just surprised they're still using Dane. I'm sure they like playing with Dane or something, but Dane in the cast was really hard to watch, I won't lie. And if I'm this team, I'm definitely just playing Nix and Christian, I think. And then Jeff and Leops. But yeah, Nix is like very underrated, I think. Like a very solid D2 runner is what I would have Nix as. I think he could play in D1 and do fine. And then Leops and Jeff are just D1. Leops I know is a little slept on now, I think. I don't think he's that bad as everyone makes him out to be. I don't think he's like peak Leops, but I still think he's maybe a little underrated compared to where everyone rates him. Alright, this is my team. I'm going to try to just keep this short and sweet. We have 4 D1 runners as a second, like in the 5 to 8 stage. I think we're a pretty strong team to compete. I have us at the top of top 8. I think we can make top 4 because of the group we pulled. But if we just look, we're using me, Zesty, Zilla, Thunda with Alo bagging. If you look at Thunda, he's kind of like a Casperinos type war player, where he's definitely better at Mogi, but you know, solid mechanically, you can't leave him out. Zesty is super smart. Definitely the weakest player on this team mechanically, but probably the strongest by far. He's just gonna be a huge help. Super smart. He's gonna win wars for us. And Zilla's one of those players. You know, I play with him in Lover's Posture all the time. He's like a 130 or bust pretty much. But that's just how he was in the last season. I think Zilla has the potential to just be like one of the best players in the game, and not be a 130 or bust. I think his potential is just being no lower than 90 every single match. So we'll see if that happens this season. I have really high expectations for us. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm playing here. But yeah, I think we have 2 very solid communicators with me and Zesty. Zilla's a good communicator in 6C, and then, you know, Thunda is going to be quiet, but, you know, he's going to do what he needs to do. And we have a D1 bagger, so that's why I rate us so highly. Eastern Europe. I think I have to see this team here at the highest potential upset. If we look at the group stages, they pulled the weakest group by a ton, and I can see this team winning against France any day, and I actually should have had this team over Italy. So if we look at their lineup, they're just using Ivan, Psycho, Zyra, and I would imagine Smash with Andres bagging, and Andres is a solid bagger, and the rest of those runners are D2, like top of D2 the past couple seasons, so I think it's hard to rate this team anywhere else. I can't really touch on I don't imagine them playing anyone else, maybe like Ops or something, but yeah, I think this team's problem is probably just going to be communication and decision making, if anything. But I think if they can figure that out, they have a really good shot at beating France. Team England. Originally, if you were to ask me as a Team Canada member, I would not have been scared to play Team England. They obviously won in 2023. I think the group pools of the top teams are a lot weaker this year, if I'm to be honest. I have England as my favorite right now, which is really surprising because, again, as being a Team Canada member, I wouldn't have been, you know, that scared to pull England. I probably would have rather played England than India. So I don't know. I would assume this team runs Chi, Zach, Xander, and then if I'm this team, I'm running Rosen 100%. I think maybe you can even sub out Chi for Rosen. I think Rosen's probably the second best player on this team. Obviously next to Xander. Xander's been winning everything, MVPing everything. But the 2S members on this team are very hit or miss. I find that playing against 2S, like, they should be very good. Like I rate Zach and Chi. I thought when Chi went by Bo, he was very slept on. You should rate those players highly. Obviously, Zach played in D1 for a while. Won it this season again. Won it last season. But yeah, this team just has a lot of good players. I wouldn't be surprised if they play Luke either, although I think that's kind of a mistake, if I'm to be honest. I think Luke is probably... I would honestly play Fred over Luke, maybe. This is probably pretty close, but this team has a bagger and Jazz, which I really think separates this team. This team just kind of has everything. They don't like. I don't think they have the strongest running core. I think they have probably maybe the strongest depth of running. But it's really they just have the bagger. They have everything that is just good enough. It seems where it's like at such a high level where I have them as my 1. All right, France. I think they're just using Byron, Fatal, LXD, DZ, Knight, and then Shura. Everyone kind of sleeps on Shura, in my opinion. He averaged like 27 in D1, but he had a few standout performances. I think he's like a decent Daisy player. I don't think he's like Mara or anything, but this team is definitely the weakest 5 to 8 seeded team, and I don't think it's even close. You know, Shura, you can say he can compete at D1. He's definitely like a D2, high D2 runner. Fatal's kind of fallen off a cliff as well recently, and then Byron, it's just one of those Mogies players where I don't actually know if he plays Wars. He's like a solid Mogi player. This gameplay is definitely interesting to watch. And then they don't have any issues at bagging. So I'd be really surprised. Maybe Zone gets a few matches. I think if they play Zone, they're probably throwing a bit. But yeah, I can't see this team. The way I see this is France. This match between France and Eastern Europe, that's theirs to lose. I can see them losing. Actually, I would almost put them like here, but they don't have a potential upset. They just have the potential to lose. Whereas I don't think I straight up rate Eastern Europe over France, but I can see them losing. I think just they have a stronger 4th runner. They have a stronger bagger. Their bagging is probably not going to be too much different, but I think they have a stronger 4th runner. But yeah. Team Germany is hard to talk about because this is MT, right? MT has always been seeded really high, and then they lose by a shit ton and end up forfeiting the season. So it's really hard to rate this team. Paul had a solid season in D1. I think he's been underrated for a while, maybe up until now, just because he had such a good season in D1. Definitely a solid runner. In my opinion, this is this team's best war player. And then obviously you have to talk about Kevin. He's been at the top for forever. Definitely the weirdest top player to talk about just because he's really slow, but he's really like methodical, kind of an older playstyle, like very safe playstyle. But this is one of those teams that like if there's a team that's better than us seated in that region, I think it might be Germany. Although like Germany and Benelux are both kind of like weird teams to play against because I feel like they both kind of have the same problem where maybe I'd be more scared to play a roster of Christian, Jeff, Leops, and Nix, to be honest. But you know, this is definitely a solid team. I have this team as like one of the solids just to make it in the top 8. They pulled a group where I can see maybe LTA beating them, but I would probably bet against it. But I think this team would be way better if Crash played, but he's not playing this World Cup. So you have to look, and they have to either play Lucid or Kenny, which I think is a very big hit to this team. Paul and Kevin are both like solid war players, but I don't see Lucid or Kenny as being either. So this is a really weird team to talk about, and I'd be surprised to see how they do. Alright, I originally had Team India as my number 1 team coming into this. I think they have the best runners by far. I would not want to play that core. This is because IG who won, or maybe came in second D2 in a few seasons ago. When you look at their runners, I think Emil is probably the weakest. Maybe Ornan now, I'm not really sure, but all these runners have hit, you know, Grandmaster or Master at some point. They're all very strong mechanically. No lack of communication, maybe almost over communicate. But I have Jaker as like a top player compared to a lot of other people. I think Jake is just really good. He's a very solid player, and I think very smart in Wars and underrated. And then Ornan is just kind of like a freak to play against, and Pix is just a solid D1 runner. I definitely have Emil as this team's weakest runner, but I do think he is better than Devil to play, although I think Devil's pretty good as well. So if one of these can't ever play, Devil can always fill in, and they have enough depth where, you know, they can get by. The reason I have this team under England, though, is because of their bagger, and I think England has a better bagger. I don't know if they're playing Astro or under, but definitely one of the weaker baggers, I think, when you're talking about a top team here. All right, Ireland's a tough one to rank, because I do think they are one of the stronger, like, 3rd round teams, if that makes sense. They have Cormac, Jara, both D2 players. Cormac definitely makes a lot of mistakes watching him play the match. The reason I can't have this, you'll have to almost rate them here, not because they already lost the match that they had to win, but they kept it like decently close. But if I were to rate this before World Cup even played, they're probably sitting here or here, probably above Australia because I think they have better depth running. So you have Cormac, Jara, both D2. LTO is very impressed by, and whoever Katz is on this roster, I was also impressed by his gameplay. Kept it pretty close against Benelux. They're not going to make it in this year into the bracket stage, but I think they had a pretty good showing. And again, this is just a team that needs more experience, and this will be a good year for them. Okay. Italy, unfortunately. Yeah. Probably around here or here. I actually can't believe this team is seated where they are, if I'm being honest. I have to imagine it's because they have Scamp. Scamp is this team's most important player by a mile. He's a solid D1 bagger, like a top D1 bagger. Very good. So they're not going to struggle with shocks, but this team needs more than shocks to win, I think. You have Sal, who's their best runner by far, definitely probably their leader. Though I haven't seen play recently, but like in the past I thought he was underrated, but he's always been his biggest enemy. In my opinion, his mindset is like cooked. But like there's nothing wrong with him mechanically. He should be a lot better than he is, I think. But right now I'd have him as like a D2 runner. And if you look across, no one else in this roster is even like D3 or D4. Like this is mostly a D4 roster plus Sal. Raz isn't like terrible. Like I don't think Cross or Raz are terrible. It's just when you look at their competition, I cannot believe like Eastern Europe is below them. I almost can't believe that like Africa is below them. Like I don't know. It's just kind of crazy because you look and like Exwell and Sal are maybe comparable, but like you would take this depth of roster over this depth of the roster, I think. So yeah. I mean, it's just tough because I guess Africa doesn't have a bagger, but I would actually yeah, I guess that makes sense to me. I would be shocked. They have the group if they need to make top. Like maybe I have to put them like bottom here. Because they have the group to do it if they want to win and prove me wrong. But I think this is one of the weaker teams in the World Cup. Latin America pulled the group of death, and I think this team is just kind of like here probably. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I think that team's probably better than Eastern Europe, but they pulled a harder team to upset in Germany, which I think is one of the stronger teams. I think Germany, Benelux, and us are all pretty similar. I just think we're the only ones with 4 D1 runners and a D1 bagger. So, yeah, I mean, LTA, definitely the strongest third-seeded team. Yeah, pretty much by far. I can't believe that team's third over... Oh no, I guess they're both third. But even over France, I'd have this team over France for sure almost. Probably pretty comparable. Victor's like low D1, probably a D2-ish runner. I probably have this team running Victor, Silver, Mike, Dose. I think Dose is underrated. They're gonna struggle with shocks. I would assume Mephisto is or Histo. I don't know how you say his name. It's probably bagging. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this team. Everyone kind of knows who they are. Yeah, probably mostly a D2 team overall, but not bad by any means. I could see this team maybe making an upset against Germany if Germany have a terrible day. But yeah, it's fun didn't make it, nor did Spain. So I'm going to talk about Nordic, and I do have Nordic as my weakest team by quite a bit. Yeah, by quite a bit. I almost can't speak. I know Lonnie's like definitely underrated. Kind of like a Lochi, who he's like, I think he's better than a lot of people see him. Maybe up and coming. I think this team is just kind of filled with up and coming players that just use this as experience. But unfortunately, I think that's why this group stage is bad for World Cup, because you're just gonna have a lot of blowouts. This team just needs experience. You have like Arvo, who's like a time trialer sort of, Lonnie, Theodore, and I assume they use Lexus as their fourth, and I have no idea who this team's bagger is. It's just you're not strong enough to compete. No one above this roster. This is like a D4, D5 team, which is kind of tough to rate. So I have this team as being the weakest. I think they actually did a really good job against Asia. I wouldn't be surprised to see them like do well in the future, but this is definitely just kind of a happy to be here team. Okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of time with these two US teams, but I'm gonna just rate them right now. This is South, this is North. I would maybe have them here. I do have US North as significantly weaker than like India, which is why I maybe have them, but I think South has a chance to not finish top of their group. So starting with North, this team's led by Casperinos and Mac, which is definitely something to talk about here with Frozen being banned. No Frozen means no Mura, which means this team is a lot different. But yeah, I would assume this team uses Casper, Revan, Brody for sure, and then I think their fourth is kind of up in the air. If it's me, I'm obviously choosing Fresh because I played with Fresh and Lover's Posture, but I can see this team using like Swig. I can see Swig getting time. I can see them playing Edison because I know they like Edison, they rate Edison. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Ray gets playing time. This team's main issue, they have the best depth of bagging by far. That's another thing to talk about, is if they're going to use Mac or Snoopy. I do think Snoopy is significantly better, not significantly, but definitely better than Mac. But I don't think this team loses much by playing Mac either. Mac's a great bagger in his own right. I just think Snoopy is probably the best bagger in NA right now. But I also don't know too much about bagging, and I've just seen Snoopy like demolish people. I've played against Snoopy so much, and we just get demolished in shocks. So I rate him pretty highly. I wouldn't be surprised if this team uses Swig. Swig definitely almost underrated at this point. I haven't heard a lot of people putting him in like a really good conversation. I would like to play with Swig someday, but yeah, Brody's the best player on this roster by quite a mile. This team's kind of going to rest a lot on Revan. Revan, a few years ago, I'd have as this team's best player. In the past, very, very good, very, very fast, very smart. And the reason I think you have to play Revan is because who else on this team is going to communicate? Who is going to be the IGL on this team? Casperinos, like, is a hard player to talk about. I compared him to Thunder earlier, or Thunda. Mogi, central player. I think he struggles a lot in like mid packs and wars and can't really communicate that well. I don't think he understands how wars works and like what he needs to be doing, which is kind of sad as a lead. Like, it's not sad as a leader, but you need as a leader, I would expect him to like try to take the reins a little bit more, but I don't think he will be. I think he's just gonna be like a solid player. And he is like, you can't leave him out of this team. You can't leave him out of playing on this team either. So he's just like a very strong, like Mogi-ish player that I don't think will be calling the shots. So you have to do Revan here. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do Edison also for communication. I just think Edison's the weakest runner on this roster. So it's kind of tough. Birdie, very smart player, just doesn't communicate. Like, he's not going to be an IGL. He's going to communicate a decent amount. It's not enough to IGL and call the shots. Fresh kind of the same way. Both really smart players, which is why I think you almost go Fresh here. But yeah, Ray is also really good communicator, very smart player. So I can see a lot of these players getting playing time, especially with this format. And I expect them to win their group, probably. I don't think it'll be like that close. They can maybe lose to Germany, but I wouldn't expect it. I think Brody is just too strong, and Casperinos isn't like bad by any means. So, all right, controversy time. We pulled US South. And originally, I would maybe have it like this. I would almost like, but no, definitely not. US South is definitely the favorite against us. I just think it's close. We were definitely happy playing them. His team's led by Casper and Macy. Chantwon, I almost want to say, is like an underrated war player. I won't speak too much about playing with him, but if people are able to play with him, then he's like a solid player. Definitely like hard to play against, kind of weirdly. Almost like Ornan, I guess. Like, I don't really know how to compare him, but he's like not bad. I think he gets a bad rep from a lot of top players because of like outside of the game factors. But not bad by any means. He averaged like 31 in D1 this season. That, you know, on the weakest team, or one of the weaker teams in D1, but he was that team's best player. So this team's not going to like have an issue with communication with Macy and Casper. They both communicate a decent amount. Both war players through and through. You know, I'll give Macy their flowers a little bit too. I think Macy is maybe not underrated, but definitely a very smart player, very good IGL, kind of similar to Barry, where like maybe a little indivy at times, probably less so. But playing with Macy to me is like super easy just because how like fast they call like stuff, and they just seem to always know what's going on. So definitely those are their locks. Bobby bagging. Bobby's a great bagger. And I can really see this team using a lot of different people on the roster. I'd assume Ken gets a lot of playing time here. Ken's kind of not similar to Casper in this because he's a war player to begin with, but kind of like quiet, like runner type, maybe like a Sane type. But I would be surprised. I can see Sane getting playing time, but I think Sane's probably one of their weaker runners on this roster. But yeah, for their fourth slot, I would imagine they go with Thunder, but I can see literally anyone. Like I can see Revise getting playing time. I can see Shadow getting playing time. I can see like Gizbro getting playing time. So I'd be interested to see who they end up playing against us, because I would assume that's who they figure they have the best chance at winning is with. But this is a good team. I think top 4 for a reason. I don't think we're better than them, but definitely I think the most beatable out of those top 4 teams. Obviously they made it to semis, was it last year or in 2023? But they lost Sam, who is by far the best bagger. So I don't think Bobby's that much worse than Sam, but yeah, I do think given the right or wrong matchup, this team is probably weaker running wise than a lot of these other top teams where, yes, all these players are D1, but they're probably on the weaker side of D1. Kind of similar to us in Canada. So yeah, I think that should be a good matchup and probably the one to watch out for with all the Eastern European matches as well. This will be interesting to watch. But this is my final list. I'll have this linked in the description. I also wanted to give a shout out to Torpeter21 on YouTube, otherwise just Torp. I saw this video that he made in 2023 and I kind of stole his idea. I want to do it for this season or this year World Cup. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope those playing, wish everyone good luck, but I hope those playing found this interesting and maybe I touched upon you and you got to hear either my criticism or my opinion of you, which I think is kind of fun. So yeah, good luck to all the teams, and I will see you like June 9th or 10th whenever the servers are back up.